Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 131 of Sports Management Podcast. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to ask you for a very small favor. Please subscribe to this podcast, hit that follow button, subscribe, whatever it's called on the different platforms, and give an honest review. That is really the best way to help me and the podcast grow even more. Thank you. Now, today's guest is Magdalena Nour, the head of sustainability at Malmö FF, one of Sweden's most successful football clubs. We spoke about how Malmö FF has managed to decrease their water use, how they work towards inclusion in Malmö, the collaboration with other clubs, how Malmö is working with sustainability with regards to food, why Magdalena is an incurable optimist, and much more. Magdalena Nour, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much.
You are the head of sustainability at the Malmö FF, a Swedish football club. So can you tell us a little bit about this role and what you do?
Well, the role has been, the position has been there for almost 10 years, but I've been having the position since last summer. And before that, I was working as a consultant for about 1 year within the sustainability. So my assignment there was actually to make a structure on how we are going to work with sustainability onwards, obviously together with the management group and the board. So my role today is basically as a coordinator. So I'm coordinating all the sustainability work within the organization for our staff. We have about 120 full-time employees, and we have about 1,500 part-time employees working when there's a game and big conferences and so on. But also it's about our role in the Swedish Football Federation and in the European context. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm like the coordinator, I would say. So I do the studies, I make the compilations, I make the agenda. But the point is to get all my colleagues engaged in the work for sustainability within all dimensions, and to learn and to share what we have learned to the football and the sports community. So I would say coordinator.
Interesting. So Malmö FF is a very strong club and a strong brand, both in Sweden, but also internationally. Mm-hmm. So how are you using this reach that Malmö has from a sustainability standpoint?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because we lifted it before that we do have like an extra responsibility because we have a strong brand, and we will reach audiences or individuals that normally won't read an article about sustainability, or maybe not even watch a TV program. So what we're trying to do is to reach out to our audiences at the stadium in a game, or if we're having, as we also do, hosting big conferences and so on, that we are pitching simple, small messages about the way of like putting posters on the back of the bathroom doors, for example, or putting assignments for people that please take care of your trash in this way because we are doing this and this with it. So, for example, for the last season or last year's season, we were plugging in every game we had, every home game. We were telling people on signs, but also on the big screen in the pitch about how much water we've been saving, 720,000 liters per year, by making the urinals water-free. So we have a chemical solution instead, so no water there. And also that we put out 96 different places to sort your garbage when you're in a game. So please use them so that we can recycle everything, plastic, paper, food, and so on. And also the fact that we are actually hiring and paying everyone working at the game. We don't do volunteers. So like I mentioned, in a game day, we have about 1,500 people extra employed. And those are working in the kitchen, in the restaurant, in the service areas, ticketing, welcoming people, all kinds of things. But all these people are paid by the hour. So it might be young people. It's many people who has their first job. And it's a lot of people who have been struggling to get a job, but they can start in this way. So these three things we have been communicating in all games last year for the audience, for the guests to see. But also what we do is that we have a management, a CEO, but also a communications and commercial manager who speak about sustainability and the importance of it as soon as they get an opportunity. And they are actually invited to many companies or the municipality and so on to, as myself, like this, for example, to spread the word on how we're working with sustainability because it is very broad. And the last thing I would say is that in the European Club Association for the elite football clubs in Europe, our CEO is on the board and he is the head of the sustainability working group, which means that we are trying to drive change in Europe with 22 other clubs that are member of this working group, putting up standards for ECA and UEFA, in cooperation, obviously, what kind of demands we can put on clubs. But then we have to consider that you have clubs with like 1 or 2 employees and you have clubs with 1,000 employees. So the resources are very different.
Of course. So do you see yourself as the front runner with regards to sustainability and, showing good example and hoping that more clubs will follow in your footsteps?
Well, we like to think so. There are many clubs doing a lot of good initiatives and making many things of it, and talking about it. And we're happy to see that more and more clubs in Sweden and Europe are actually producing sustainability reports. And the interesting part is that business is catching up here. So you have also compliance. Everyone's talking about CSRD, the new European Union regulations. And ECA is estimating that about 100 clubs in Europe, privately owned as a company, then would have to comply and report to sustainability work as a large enterprise. That will not encompass the Swedish clubs because we are NGOs technically, even if our membership organization actually owns companies that have a pretty large turnover. But with that said, it's very interesting to see that it's both compliance, but it's also about business. We have sponsors and partners that expect us to behave in a certain way. So yeah, but we do see ourselves as front runners.
I see. Are you exchanging information and ideas between the clubs within Sweden and in Europe to learn from each other?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In Sweden, it's the Swedish elite football, which is part, so to say, for the Football Federation. We have regular meetings and they have their staff there who are trying to do exactly what you're saying to enhance exchange and learn from each other. So, of course, we do. And we have good examples that we've been taking from others and we share with others. And also on a European level, I mean, this project I was mentioning before, which is financed by the European Union, managed by the University of Pisa, Santa Anna, Scuola Superiore, who are working with sustainability in sports. There we are doing an ISO certification 14001. And that's with Betis, Sevilla, and Porto, AC Porto, and then the Romanian Football Federation. So they are actually already certified, but they are focusing on the environmental part. And for us, Malmö FF, we have historically been focusing on the social part, inclusion with school children and unemployed and cooperating with the society and a municipality. But we are like getting more into the environmental part in different aspects. So I would say there is a big exchange. And also, I mean, to get the UEFA license to play in Europe, you have to have an appointed sustainability officer. It doesn't have to be a full time because you can't demand that of smaller organizations. But I just recently, last week, signed a paper that Malmö FF needs to deliver to UEFA that, yes, I'm in charge of sustainability in the club, and that you need for the license. I also think that because the standard in general in Sweden are relatively high, we are expected to pitch in. We're expected to do things. One challenge for sports organizations to drive change in Sweden is that most organizations do not own their own facilities. We have a Eleda Stadium, and there are 2 other elite clubs that own their own stadiums in Sweden. But for the rest of the clubs, it's rented by the municipality, which means that in one way you can't control it totally, and in another way you can't demand. There is a small clash in Sweden that the football clubs or other organizations in sports are demanding facilities from the municipalities, but they have to prioritize money between school and other things also. So it's different in different countries, what you can control and what you can enhance. But yeah, there's definitely a big exchange.
I see. So you mentioned some great initiatives with you said with the urinals to cut down on water and with the recycling bins and so forth. There is also, like, when you're talking about a team, there's a lot of travel and maybe what you eat and the kit that they are wearing. So are there some other, sustainable initiatives with regards to the team?
Definitely, within all the areas that you're mentioning. And part of this ISO certification 14001 that we're doing is to make like an inventory. So it's very obvious, these areas that you mentioned, but also other things that have popped up. But within food, I would say, for example, that we are serving great amounts of food, large amounts of food, obviously at the games. Then we have about 2,500 VIP servings, but we also sell 9,000 hot dogs in the in the stadium every game, and of course a lot of other items. But we also have a lunch restaurant in our stadium where we serve 200 lunches every working day. And we also have a high school within our building focused on sports. And there are 600 high school students having lunch every day. So we are buying enormous amounts of food, different kinds of food. And there are challenges, obviously, to get them as ecological as possible with as small transport distance as possible, because it doesn't always apprehend. And also because if we are asking for, let's say, sustainable, ecological vegetables, maybe one farmer don't have the possibility to deliver the full amount because we need an extensive amount of food of every kind. But we are very much looking into that, and we're talking very much about the preservation, so that if you use food for the buffets, for example, in the VIP areas, I can assure you that the leftovers will be served at the lunch restaurant, and the day after that, it will be served for the high school students. So obviously that puts high demands on the quality of food safety, that everything is taken care of in a good way. But it's big things and small things. So it's about, we're not using any plastic items anymore. We only have reusable items. So mostly it's like glass and china and so on. But if we do need to have, there are demands, for example, from conference guests that they want sustainable food, they want vegetarian food. One thing that is actually very simple and very effective that we've been doing last year, and that's the kitchen staff who invented it themselves. But we used to have, in the lunch restaurant, we used to have 3 courses. So one was meat, one was soup, and one was vegetarian. And it was named those 3 things. We took away the soup. The soup is still there, but it's just included to everyone, and it's smaller portions. But we have 2 courses. They're not called anything specific, but the vegetarian one is put up first. So you will always have 2 things to choose from for lunch. The first one, vegetarian, and obviously it says what's in it, but it doesn't say the word vegetarian. And then the second one will have fish or poultry or meat in it. But the funny thing is that it went from about 10% of the sales till 40% of the sales. So people obviously can appreciate vegetarian, well-cooked food. We should just not call it vegetarian. That's an initiative that worked out really, really well. And then when you're talking about transportation, obviously it's a big thing also. And I will say that as much as possible, we travel by bike in Malmö. So all the local transportations are actually by bike or by buses. But also if we don't go too far to games, it's a bus, and then it is biofuel or electric if possible. And then, of course, for longer games, we will have to fly because the players, the 18 players, they cannot sit still on a train for 8 hours and then expect to perform their top the day after. But we are measuring it. and we're doing statistics, and we are really trying to plan well ahead so we can take just commercial trains also. One issue there is that we don't always own the date. So that means that it's actually the commercial interest. It's the TV channels that are transmitting games. They're the ones who are owning the exact times and dates and stuff. So sometimes it's travel. The travel is difficult to plan far ahead, but we're really working on it. And I will say that for the staff, all the transportation, we only have electric cars, and we're not using any diesel in the organization, for example. The stadium is 100% green electricity run. And we are now, during the next year, we're going to put solar panels on our stadium. And these solar panels, it's quite complicated because we don't have, the stadium is only 10 years old, almost, but it wasn't planned for solar panels. So there are no big surfaces to put them on. But now we have an alternative that we hope will come through. And that's because you have a lot of, I don't know the words, but you have a lot of small areas, like the big pieces holding the whole stadium together. And you can put like a meter big plates on top of those, and many of them. And then you get as much electricity that will make us self-sufficient on an everyday work day. And then in a game day, we will have to have extra electricity from outside. So it's really going forward, small steps and big steps. And the last thing I would say that you mentioned is about the jerseys and shirts and the clothing. And yes, it is a huge challenge. You have to have every team has to have 2 or 3 standards. And then you have new for every season, you have new sponsors, you have new prints and so on. But what we're trying to do there, I mean, obviously we're making money on the merchandise too. So it's an important part. People want the merchandise and we want to sell it. But we are working with sustainable partners and we're putting demands on them. And it can be anything from the plastic wrapping around the clothes to how they're transported. And one thing we did for quite some time is that we always get like unprinted jerseys to our shop, and then we print it ourselves. We put on the print, the names or the whatever sponsors and so on. And that means that we can have the same jerseys for a full season. It's not like it's coming already printed and then, we have leftovers. And then actually we are doing recycling with a charity organization in Malmö. So old jerseys that we're not going to use anymore, we give them to the charity and they're selling them at their price in their secondhand store. And also we've been doing, helping them to get other types of clothes at games, where we were encouraging the audience to bring clothes they want to donate. And then we were putting up big paper bins and collected it and transported it. So it's difficult. I mean, it's all in the big strategy that always think recycling. And that's where we get to the one very important part of my work, which is the engagement of the staff, that you always think like one step ahead, or try to take a step back and think before you order something. And we are really encouraging people to do that. Sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't. It gets more expensive, or it takes more transportation or whatever. But we are really trying to change different things. And sometimes it's really, really easy. Like I said, the vegetarian food. And another thing that the kitchen did was they used to get bake-off bread. And then they were just thinking, but if we bake our own bread, how difficult is it? Do we have the machine for it? And how much bread do we actually serve? And then they figured out that no, it's okay, we can do it ourselves. And so they started the next day. So then we saved the transportation of ready-made bread within plastic. So instead we're getting flour and water. That's what you need to make bread. So small steps.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And so many, as you said, like small steps, but also some bigger ones with the solar panels. And of course, in Sweden, with the weather, we cannot maybe get, we don't get an overload of sunshine, but still, as you said, enough to power a non-match day. And I mean, all small steps, of course, are good steps. And I like what you said also in your role, that it comes with educating the internal staff on how to act and how to make purchases. So So are you having some type of, educations, presentations for the staff so that they can improve their day-to-day with regards to, say, sustainability?
Well, I'm happy you're asking that because actually we're putting the last finishing touches on a sustainability training course, an e-learning that will be mandatory for all full-time employees, but also in a shorter version, mandatory for all temps, all the extra people working for a game day. So I will say that it has been a theme for many years. When we have like in conferences with all the staff, it's about 120 people, but also with the players and with the coaches. We're coaching about, we have a school academy with about 1,200 students playing football as a part of their school. And then we have the football academy where you also have a big amount of kids training. And it's very important to educate the coaches and the trainers. And we have been educating them actually in the Children's Convention. So they know that children have rights as subjects. So you are a very important person in all these kids' lives. And don't underestimate the power you have, but also the effect of your way of acting. And it's also like practical things like if you see a kid that obviously has challenges, maybe at home, maybe in school, maybe they don't look like they're doing well. It's not your job as a 17-year-old training assistant to solve it, but you can pass it forward upwards in the organization and we will handle it. Worst case, we will make a what we call a complaint to the municipality to look into this children's everyday life. That's, in the extreme case, but that they are not alone and we should respect the kids and we are very important because it's not always easy, even if you're a grown-up coach, it's not easy to realize the impact you have unless you remember it from your own childhood, which many of our coaches do, obviously. So that's for training, but also like, for example, in the staff day we had when we had an internal conference in September, me and the sustainability team that we have ambassadors from different kinds of the organization. I don't have any employees, so I like to call them my sustainability team. It's people with other assignments, but that they have a passion for sustainability. We actually made a Kahoot, a quiz, with all the 80 people, where they got to answer. And of course, it's a competition. So everybody wants to participate. They got to answer 12 questions on things that we've been accomplishing the last year. So we could feel really great on all the things we accomplished. And that was a great moment of us to also talk about the right answer to the question just after people answered the Kahoot. And in the end of the day there, we also asked everyone to pitch in and send email. They were sitting in smaller groups with things that they've been thinking about that maybe we can contribute. And actually right now we're preparing, in March, we have the next internal meeting conference. And then we will of course give feedback. We got about 70 suggestions on things to do. And some of them are actually already solved, but there's an information gap. So that's really good to know. So we will give the information, but there are also really good ideas. Some of them are not realistic. Some of them are too expensive. Some of them will probably not work. We might try them. And some of them we're actually already working on. But people in the financial department, they are not aware of what people are doing in the kitchen. So, we really try to enhance that. But I will say, we're doing like I said, putting the finishing on this e-learning that everyone will partake. And the good thing is that we're also giving this to our sponsors, all the partnership companies. They have already been asked to do with our basic values. Like we're happy to have you as a partner. We would like to share our values with you, so you are aware of how we think in the organization. But now we will also, by time, we will add this e-learning for partners and sponsors, so they can get a hint of how we're working in an everyday life. But the second thing is obviously that we're doing a sustainability report, the third one that we're producing, and that is more for official presentation. But hopefully, some of the staff will also read it. So we are training. But you were saying this about educating, and that is a big part of it. But I would say that the most important part is to encourage and to give courage to try things. And that is up to our management group with our CEO, the commercial manager, and everyone else to really make it completely clear that just do it. Let's try. Let's see how it works out. Can we find a partner to help us do it even better? Or do we do it internally? Can we hire the services? How much does it cost? What's the return on investment? Because many times we actually save money on doing it sustainable. So I would say to encourage and to educate.
No, I'm sure that you save a lot of money. And from a commercial standpoint, it's also very important because you're having the sustainable mindset also when picking a partner, of course, but also maybe the partners put some pressure on you that we want to sponsor your club if you are doing these types of initiatives. So have you seen a difference when you're taking more initiatives like this, that more sponsors are eager to work together with you?
Well, I'm afraid not that clear, not yet. What we do see is that people are, large companies are just expecting that we do something. I won't say it's like a hard demand, but they are putting questions. One thing that we do know is a unique selling point is all the social sustainable work we do, that we work against racism, we work against homophobia, we encourage the pride movement, we work pretty hard on inclusion. It's a balance, as you understand, that we are there to win the football game. So there is automatically a tryout, and then some kids, some young people, and some grown-ups will not be allowed to participate the next season in the 18. So there we have to have a safety net with referrals to other clubs. And I know that the coaches, especially the youth coaches, it's the worst time of the year for them when they have to make the selection. So there is a balance, but inclusion in the way that coming as a spectator, you should be able to afford a ticket. There are always tickets that are affordable, not for the premier seats, but there are affordable tickets. And also that we're trying to invite schools. We're trying to go out to schools. We're having initiatives like Malmö FF in the city or something like that. MFF is Samhället. And that we have been doing several initiatives where we go out to areas where people are maybe not aware of that everyone is welcome and that there are affordable tickets. And then we get support from our partners. Maybe someone bring the ice cream they're selling, or you bring games you're selling, or just staff. And obviously we bring the football players from the representative teams, both the male and female, to just play football or write autographs or whatever, to hang out with kids. And we see a big effect on that. So I would say that what we do have to develop is the communication, because I don't think that I know that people in general are not aware of the extent of the sustainability work we do. And I think we are one department out of many. And in the end of the day, people care about the football players and the results. So when I go to the communications department and I want to put this and this and that in different channels, they're like, okay, hold your horses. We got a new player there. We're selling this one. We're buying that one. We're achieving this and that and so on. So yes, we do get slots, but not as much as I would like to, obviously. So I think it's a big information thing too.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said before, that also the communication internally, that maybe not everyone in the finance department knew some of the initiatives, but also, of course, then to reach also inside the club, but also outside to the society so that they know what all the great things that you're doing as well.
Yeah. But I can say one thing there, that now when we have our women's team that are advancing, and they are now in like the second league in Sweden. So they have been advancing step by step to different leagues the last few years. And next season, they're going to play all their games in the big stadium, in Eleda Stadium. And now we're talking about how to attract the audience that will normally go to the men's game in the Premier League, to also get them to go to the women's team, to their games. And some of them are already going, and we want more to come. But it's like we have a different product, and we have to package it in a different way to make people come there. But we do have partners who only go to the women's game. They don't care about the men. So it's And I think smart partners are targeting their target groups with diverse producting. So there we see a difference. And obviously, we are working very hard on the inclusion part of girls and women. We are far from perfect, and the whole system is not perfect. The system is broken. No, but what we are very proud of is that we've been having for a long time. We have in a municipal school just next to the stadium. We have a training academy for many years, and there have been every season you have about 200 kids trying out. They are 13, 14, 15 years old. And for every season, you have about 200 kids trying out to be one of the 30 kids that will combine their school with professional coaching. And from last August, we also have 30 girls. So that means that, and that's the first group. But that means in 3 years, we will have 90 boys and 90 girls. And of course, that will also enhance the referrals to the other teams. So we are now looking very much into the conditions of the women's team when they kind of move into the big stadium. Because obviously we will do what we can to give them the best surroundings and support. But again, the system is not perfect. So we will not be able to give them exactly the same services and support as the male team has, but we will do our best.
Yeah, and I mean, women's sport and women's football is something I've covered many times on this podcast, and it's such an interesting field, but a business opportunity. And as you also mentioned, is that it is a different product, and it might not be the exact same fan base as for the men's team. So just to find that difference to how to promote the women's team, how to support the women's team, might not be exactly the same as for the men's team.
No, but it's like small things, and I think it's very important to remember, like you said, it's not the same product. But it's also important to remember that it's not to give the women's team exactly the same as the men's team. It's to ask the women and their staff, their supporters, their surrounders, the entourage, what they need. You know, maybe they need other things to perform, to optimize their performance. Maybe it's not the same things as the male team. And we don't know that because we didn't ask the question before. So we saw it, for example, it's a very small detail, but it's important. It's with food after away game. That if you go by train or bus and you go back and forward basically the same day or just the day before, they get their food from our own kitchen with them, and then to sit and eat in the bus or the train on the way home. And it's very interesting because both players, the women and the men, they have been performing at their top for 1.5 hours, 2 hours. And they are exhausted and they need a lot of good food, but they don't want the same food. So you can't make it's not the same recipe. It's different stuff that they are happy to get. And it's like, okay, why didn't you say so? Well, and no one asked. And so it's like the balance there. So I will say that the more focus we get on to finding out what makes the top women team perform at their top, the better they will get. And that goes for everything. I love this thing about when you're talking about in Sweden has been big discussions for uniforms when you come to police or the army, that lots of women serving in the police force, and you have also women, all young women also have to do their military service today, but the underwear is not adapted. So, I mean, you can ask any sports person, what kind of underwear would you need as a police officer or as a soldier to perform perfectly? Well, you can obviously not wear bad fitting, not fit underwear, because then that's all you will think about. But they get literally like an adapted version of the male underwear. And the female body doesn't look like the male body. So it will be too big in some places and too small in other places. It just doesn't work. And it's crazy. It's 2024. But I will say not that we have a problem with the clothing or the underwear for our players, but we have other things that we can adapt. And we know from science, for example, that shoes have to look different. The women's shoes and the men's shoes because the knee and the foot doesn't look the same. And the women are lighter normally, and so on. So you have different things. So that's an interesting journey that we are focusing on to be even better now, to figure out what can we do to get the most people coming to the games and the women to perform at their top.
No, the last part there is so interesting, and it's not, of course, up to Malmö FF to solve that alone. But as we have mentioned, maybe you can put some pressure on the government or something, because that's something I've talked about also. That you mentioned that feet are different. Women generally have larger hips, which puts a different angle on the knees, and that's you see a lot of ACL injuries in the women's game. The different pitch, like there's so many things that needs to be considered.
Yeah, the good thing is that, like you said, we obviously can't do it alone, but there are also large and resourceful clubs in Europe now focusing on these things. So the double teams clubs are getting more and more. And I'm really looking forward. It will be very exciting to see what the clubs in UK and France and Spain, Germany, and many other countries, what they come up with. Because I think, like you say, there's a lot of improvements to be done.
I'm interested in your background and how you got into sports. And I know that you have worked also with the Olympic movement. So can you talk about your background and how you got into sports and where you are now?
Yeah. Well, quite honestly, I don't care that much about sports, but I do care about people and how people work together and how you make people to perform at their top. I've been in the people business for 25 years, working with recruitment, staffing, but also organizational development and how to optimize teams. And then when the sustainability development goals and Agenda 2030 came around, and then today you have the inner development goals on leadership skills that you need to be able to reach the sustainable goals. It kind of makes perfect sense to me that if you want to perform at your top, you have to have a sustainable base. You have to, you have to feel comfortable with yourself. You have to be confident, not only in the sport part, but you also have to be pretty happy in your life in general to be able to perform the most. And that has, as I'm sure you're aware of, not been the story in back in the days. You should push yourself, you should work as hard as possible and so on. But I think today we see more and more an evaluation that even top players need to have a family life that functions. If they perform better, if they do. And my connection from the staffing and recruitment side coming into the Olympic Committee is that Adecco that I was a part of for 18 years, still today have the athlete career program cooperation with the International Olympic Committee. And the purpose of that is exactly this, to make sure that Olympians have a possibility to educate themselves, to be able to have a good life after sport. Because if they're worried about their future, they won't perform at their best. And at the same time, in many countries around the world and in many sports, you don't make money doing your sport. You have to pay money to do your sport. And that means that what Adecco could offer was also part-time work. So, for example, large companies, international companies, you could be hired the time you are able to work. You will be paid, but then they're also okay with you going away for 2 months for doing some kind of competition or the Olympics or whatever. So that was the way in. And that work I was doing in Sweden and in Denmark when I was posted in Denmark. And then also I got to be on the global steering committee working as a representative from the staffing department. So it really opened my eyes in the way of that it's the same within business as it is in sports. And the good thing about working with sports is that people truly believe that they're going to be the best in the world because that's why they're doing it. And that not only goes for Olympians. So that's why I got fascinated by sports, because it's what I've been working with is the full person, the whole person, and how you win the game by being a full person. And then you have to make sure everything is in place. That if all football players, they're good at playing football, but they have different interests. So maybe then you can let them educate themselves in different areas. On the level where I'm working now, they are getting paid, sometimes a lot, sometimes at least reasonably. They don't have to work on the side. But it's also interesting, I will go back to the women's team, that this season, because the women players, they're still in now, like I said, in the second league. Most of them have to support themselves by a part-time job still, and many of them are studying. So we actually have players now. Now most of them will get better paid, and hopefully next season, when they hopefully in the top league, they will have a decent salary to live off, but they will not be able to pile up money on the bank. So they still have to think about a working life after the career. But what is very interesting now is that we actually have at least 2 players in the women team who are studying, and they need to focus on finishing their studies. So they are taking a step back this season, playing with other clubs to be able to do the studies. Because now the demands of the football are getting higher, and they will not be able to study full time and perform at full time. But they make the choice that for 1 year or whatever is left of the education to go back to university and play on a little lower league to keep up the football. And those choices, we always have to see the full person behind it. It would be easy, for example, for Malmö FF to say, look, if you want to be on the team, you're on the team, otherwise you're out. But we don't do that. And I'm very, very proud of that. That we're trying to make arrangements. Because if we could pay them a top salary and guarantee that they will, go out in Europe, make tons of money and never have to work a day in their life. But we can't. And we can't do that with the young ones either. So my fascination is about this, to get the full people, the full person. And that's exactly the same as I've been doing all along in businesses, because your staff perform better if they're healthy, if they feel good, if they're confident, if they're safe. I'm working a lot with psychological safety and to dare to make mistakes, to develop, because otherwise we don't develop. So I'm very, very happy to be back in the sports environment. But for about 5 years, I've been more in the academic part. So now I'm back here. But it is actually the people and the organization and the performance. That's my clue.
You're in the people business, as you said.
I'm in the people business.
So if I understood you correctly before, you said that you are not managing directly any employees, right?
Correct.
So, but when we talk about psychological safety, is that something that you also educate internally to managers who have staff?
I'm not there yet. We actually, we have a split HR function, and we don't have a full-time person focusing on that. So that's a part of development. And then, of course, as you understand, as you're very well aware of, within an elite football club coaching, there are many opinions on how to coach top performance. And I'm not going to take that challenge in like making the best possible football players, because we have the sports management that obviously are doing an excellent job looking at our results. But I do think that if we're talking sustainability, it is part of my assignment too, to make sure that people have this psychological safety. And I'm very proud, actually, I will say, that we have a management who are fully aware of this. We have a CEO who is promoting exactly this. Then again, we can talk about it even more. We can train our different department leaders even more and so on. But I will say that it is a philosophy, and it goes back to the values. Again, we have one of the values is that the team is bigger than the individual, but the club is bigger than the team. So we are there to be a club for everyone. And inclusion and also diversity, as you might be aware of, maybe not everyone listening, but Malmö is one of the most segregated cities in Sweden. And it's a relatively small city, but still you can literally be on 2 sides of a pretty small road, and you have like completely different conditions for kids growing up, for schools, unemployment rate, health facts, statistics, and so on. And it is our job to be courageous and self-confident enough to invite everyone. We need the partners, we need the big companies, we need their money, we need their support, but we need all supporters. And like I said, there are affordable tickets. Everyone should be able to enter. I just want to mention one thing there, because once my phone number came up on the homepage as head of sustainability and so on, it's like people are just phoning any random phone numbers. When, is the game on today? What time is it? Or Where do I get tickets? And I'm like, I'm working with sustainability. I have no idea. But the people call randomly, weekends, evenings, whatever. But when you do get calls, like a call I got last autumn, it's worth everything because it was a young boy and he was calling me and he said, I heard that it was a young boy, maybe 10, 11 years old. And I could almost hear the parents next to him encouraging him to make the call. And then he was saying, like, what time is the women's game today? And it was like 10 o'clock it's Saturday. And I was thinking, I think it's 3 o'clock, but maybe you could look it up because I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's 3 o'clock. And then he said, okay. And then he was quiet. And I said, was it anything else you wanted to ask? And he was then saying, do you think I could be there to help with the ball? You know, like being the one who's picking up the balls when they go astray. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I have no idea, but I know the entrance is free for kids. How old are you? And then he said he was 11 or something. And I said, are you able to get to the stadium today? Could your parents take you there? And he's like, yeah, of course. I'm playing in this team there and there, and we are going to the game. You know, so it's like, I couldn't solve his wishes that day, but that a young kid picks up and also knows it was a boy going to the women's game. These are also idols, even if you might not think so. So then it's okay, you know, just call me. I will try to answer your questions. So that is the club we want to be. You should be able to call and ask how to get to the game. How do I get involved? And then go there. And I really hope they let him in and let him help with the ball. I have no idea.
I hope so too. I have read that you're an incurable optimist, which I assume comes in handy when we're having the role that you have.
Yeah, it goes back to all my days as a manager, where I found out that, you know, if things go wrong or if things are hard and harsh, it's okay to have a breakdown. But if you continue, nothing. I mean, if you can't affect the things that happened, there is really no point. So obviously, I'm not cheering every day, but I do make an effort when I go into an office or into a group of colleagues or into a client in general to be very optimistic, because smiles are contagious. And it's fun also, like there's this saying that if you go around smiling, you will always annoy someone, you know, because it gives an effect. And there's a reason why it is like laughing yoga and so on, why it works, because you fool the body. I really believe I'm very much into neurosciences. I love to study how the brain works. I mean, I'm a behavioral political science major, but I do like to understand this with the different chemical substances that make us react in different ways. And it works. I love the thesis of the power poses, that if you put your body in a position that like you just won, the body will think that you won, and it will be easier to actually go and win. And it's exactly the same with this being an optimist, that it's okay to have a breakdown. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to be sad, but just for so long time, then you have to continue, because no one will thank you. And the only person being miserable is going to be yourself. So yes, you can say incurable optimist. It gets easier as I get older. When I was a younger blonde, I was always told that I didn't really understand. It's more difficult to tell me that the older I get. I mean, why put more mystery in your own life? Things might be miserable, but let's try to change it and go on instead.
I love that. What would be your best advice for women who wants to pursue a career in sports?
Wow. Choose the right sport. No, but believe in yourself, but make sure that you are comfortable with the things asked of you. You have to look out for yourself, especially if you're a woman in sport. There will be people seeing your talent who will want to use it. And I will also say almost explore it and exploit it. So make sure that you do things that you're comfortable with. And that goes for clothing. I'm thinking about beach volleyball teams, for example. Make sure that you're comfortable with sponsor contracts. what they want you to do and perform. It's your integrity, and watch out for yourself. And then just give it a shot. You can be as good as anyone else. Believe in yourself and go for it. But don't lose the integrity in the way, because there are so many people still, like I said, again, the system is broken. It's not only football, it's all sports. Young girls are asked to do weird things. I'm not talking illegal stuff. I'm not talking exploitation stuff. I'm talking about going smiling in places so that sponsors might want to give you some money because of your smile. That's not it. I love stories like this. I don't remember her name now, unfortunately, but this American female runner, 100 meters, who lost her contract with Nike because she got pregnant. She was pregnant. She had her baby. Then she made her own sports shoes, and she got new contracts with other big companies. The systems are changing. So believe in yourself and make sure that you have insurances. You have maybe not the highest salary, but that you are safe and your integrity is intact. That I would say.
Yeah, that's a good one. Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you feel is important to mention?
Well, we haven't talked about Lennart. Lennart Johansson, he used to be the head of UEFA, a Swedish man. And he is the popular name of the trophy you get when you win the Swedish Premier League. And it is now in our custody again since November. We won the Swedish National League last year. And I will say a small part of it is our sustainability work.
I'm glad to hear it. The last question that I ask everyone is, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
Oh, I've been thinking about that. It's very, very difficult. But I assume it has to be sport. And I would say someone in about the communication. I would actually say Claire Poole. Claire Poole is a communication specialist who is organizing the Sports Positive Conference. But she's a communication specialist within sport. So I think it would be interesting to talk to her about how important it is to communicate what you're doing internally and externally. And I'm sure she can also say how you do it. She's based in the UK, but she works globally.
Oh, that would be very interesting. And also, since we talked a lot about communication today also on this podcast, so it ties it nice together. So thanks for that. Magdalena, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.